Welcome back. Today I want to look at the topic of Lent because here we are in the Lenten season. How does that happen? It happens, seems like we just had Christmas and here we are in Lent. Um, I'm going to look back a little bit down memory lane, uh, and I'm wondering if any of you remember the Lenten sacrifices you made as a child. I remember many during my Catholic school days, especially with Sister Mary Anastasia, who constantly reminded us of our Lenten observance. And if we couldn't come up with any great, serious sin, I know that she could help us out. And she would at least then tell us to offer up our penance for the poor souls in purgatory. But according to Sister Mary Anastasia, we were all sinners. And we were all definitely in need of repentance, even though we were only in fifth grade. So offer it up we did, and we had to bring in a list of what we were going to give up for Lent. And then we had to post it on the bulletin board. Then we had to pray that each of our classmates would be faithful to their Lenten observance and sacrifice. After all, we were feeling pretty bad about the, quote, blood dripping from the wounds of Jesus, end quote. Sister Mary Anastasia continually reminded us of that. So we wanted to be ever so sincere about what we were giving up for Lent. I do remember the most difficult thing I was giving up for Lent, and that was fudgesicles. You'd have to know what fudgesicles tasted like from Ed's grocery store on the corner of Court and Lafayette, because there was nothing better than that chocolate on a stick. A fudgesicle was a fudgesicle from Ed's grocery store. It was cold, slurpy, and downright delicious. There was nothing compared to it. And so I wanted to give it up because that was a big sacrifice. The problem is that I became kind of sufficiently grumpy. And when I gave up my favorite foods, my friend begins to say to me, how come when you give up fudgesicles, we do the penance? So I guess I made everybody around me pretty miserable when I didn't have my fudgesicles. I bet I didn't get a lot of grace that year in Lent. So when I think of Lent, I often think of this period of time as a time of sacrifice, a time of penance, a time of reconciliation. And many people come up with resolutions of what they want to give up. So do you remember what you gave up as a child? And what has changed now? Do you still give up something that was precious to you? Or something that you became so attached to that you could not imagine living without? Like, let's say, television, coffee, phone, iPad. And I wonder, let's try to look at Lent a little bit different this year. How about trying to give up giving up? Sounds bizarre? Maybe. But there are times in life, at least in mine, that I have attempted to introduce something new, either a new idea or a new way of thinking, and it backfires in my face. There are other times when I try to speak kindly to someone who previously turned their back on me, only to be ignored again, or maybe even bullied in response. So sometimes I find myself just plain tired of trying to get ahead, or instead of taking one step forward, I end up feeling like I'm taking many steps back. If you sense a time of feeling defeat, or having defeat settling in, or an attitude of the last page of what's the use, it may be time to try a different approach this year. Let's face it. Let's face it, Lent is not easy, but life is not easy these days. Maybe it never has been. And I suppose no one said it would be. So as we sometimes stumble through the day, wishing that it were a lot easier to get up in the morning, or a lot easier facing the tasks ahead, then maybe this Lent we could make a different resolution. Don't be a quitter. Don't give up, which can happen certainly all too easily these days, especially if we're tired, overworked, underpaid, and fresh out of ways to be kind to those who feel they don't deserve good mannered people like us. So, if you want to give up something meaningful this Lent, perhaps you can try to give up giving up. Don't give up on yourself. Don't give up being kind, thoughtful, or generous. Don't give up taking the road less traveled. And don't give up trying to change things for the better. Let's together decide to give up giving up. After all, Jesus did not give up, and he hasn't given up on us. Happy Lent. See you next week.